Hello and welcome to the Moose Hunt Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Fickett, and today we got a pretty cool little episode. We have a special guest on. We have teammate and dear friend, Mr. Kenny Mayo, and we have all the way from Montana. He works for OnX. He's a marketing manager over there. Mr. Jared Larsen, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, Rob, Kenny, appreciate you having me on. Excited to talk some moose hunting, some OnX, and whatever else we might delve into here on this fine Friday.
Heck yeah, man, that sounds good. Yeah, I happened to get your email from an acquaintance in the industry, and I was like, I'll just reach out to him, see what's up. And then you said you moose hunt, so I was like, that's perfect. Let's get this guy on here.
Yeah. Yeah, there's obviously not too many like moose endemic podcasts or really folks that are just like solely focused on moose. Obviously, Maine is, I would credit Maine anyway as the stronghold of moose hunting in the lower 48. Obviously, Colorado produces some big Shiras bulls. Idaho is kind of the place to go if you're trying to find a Shiras as far as draw odds. But man, the moose culture in Maine, I've thrown my name in the hat for the Maine moose tag for the last, 4 or 5 years.
Really? Okay.
Oh, dude, it's like impossibly cheap. Yeah, like frankly, more
right?
Not to what is it like?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's funny
Yep.
that you're touching on that because I hope we're going to touch on that even further in the episode. I know Kenny has some questions for you once we get rolling. But before we start telling too many stories and stuff, let's just start out who you are, how you got into hunting, like your history, your background, and stuff like that. So we'll just let you roll with it, and we'll kind of pick off questions and stuff as we go.
Yeah, fortunately, I was raised in a very hunt endemic family. My dad and his brothers, I think, as I was growing up and I was a youngster, he and his 2 brothers and brother-in-law, I think they went like 17 years in a row where they did an archery elk or an archery moose hunt, just DIY across the West into Canada. And so it was just like raised in that environment of getting out and getting after it. And, really didn't know what I wanted to do career-wise as I was in school, as most don't. So I just decided I was going to go to Iowa State to get resident deer tags for 4 years, which ended up playing pretty well into my career facilitation. And yeah, I managed the non-West marketing efforts for OnX Hunt. And it'll be 9 years of doing that for me coming up here in May.
Wow, that's awesome. 9 years. I don't even think I've had OnX for 9 years.
Yeah, no, I got a pretty early start on it. The app came out in 2015, I want to say. And I came on board in 2017. And before the app, it was a little micro SD card that you could plug into Garmin's. That started in 2009 as I think it was hunting GPS maps. And then it transitioned to OnX around that 2016 mark, I believe. And yeah, I'm, having been here for 9 years, just seeing the explosive growth of OnX been pretty crazy to have, started out as one of a few employees, and now we have hundreds of employees across the entire nation. So it's been a very interesting place to kind of call home, and it's really the only real job I've known.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I do have a question. So you said it used to be hunting maps, GPS or something like that?
Yeah, I think it started out as like Montana mapping company for a very short period of time. And then it was hunting GPS maps and because it was Montana, Idaho, and Washington. And then it, made the transition to OnX maps. And then it transitioned just to OnX because we have OnX Hunt, OnX Fish, OnX Off-Road. So yeah, there's a number of different name changes there between 2009 to today.
Yeah. So what's the meaning behind OnX? Is that like you're on the X marks the spot?
That was kind of the idea. It was actually an internal, an employee at the time. He's actually still works here as an engineer, and he kind of came up with the OnX maps idea. X marks the spot. Kind of has a catchy tune to it. So yeah, I think they did a really good job of branding the company to kind of stand for the purpose of the product, without even really having to know what it does.
Yeah, that's that. It's fitting.
That's awesome. It's funny you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you're talking about the DeLorme. I can remember the old PN60, getting the SD cards to put in the back, the micro SD cards. And that's how really me and Nate started with the whole bird's eye view. And then, like you're saying, that was what we had over here in the Northeast, really, as satellite imaging, new age to come out. And then just to see the explosion, as you touched on, Jared, within OnX, how popular and demanding it has become, as really just a necessity in itself, as a tool to hunt in a lot of places. We don't necessarily see the Northeast with the boundaries as much, but something like you're saying out west, how is that development, that you've seen within the industry, really helping each other out explode?
Yeah, so I mean the explosion honestly was more organic than you could even dream of. Referrals is such a large part of our business. Bob telling Tom, Tom telling Sally, Sally telling Julie. It's just such a useful product anymore. I hate to even say this, but man, it would be hard to hunt without it. There's so many things, not only from a boundary line standpoint, but just from some of the nuanced features that help you stay engaged, or I mean, honestly, replace some of the woodsman skills that it used to take in order to navigate. I'm sure you guys see it in the Northeast, the never ending woods that's kind of flat and doesn't have a lot of landmarks to it. It makes navigation just super seamless and frankly, a lot safer.
Yeah, 100%. I know. I think I said this the other day when Kenny and I were hanging out, that our woods is big, but it's like there's so much access to everything. There's roads everywhere. But to caveat what you said, yeah, there's roads everywhere, but that doesn't mean that road's leading where you're trying to go. So you're walking out of a piece of woods, you hit a road, you're like, oh, sweet, I'll just take this. And it doesn't take you anywhere where you're trying to go. But like in bigger woods where there's not as many roads, if you hit that road, oh, I know it takes me there. So with OnX here, being able to see where the roads go and if it dead ends or it doesn't and stuff like that, that OnX definitely helped me a lot of that portion of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes what would be really long, arduous treks in the dark, not so much so all too often.
Yeah,
100%. That's what the tracking feature is awesome.
Yeah.
Get yourself right out of there.
Yeah. And safety-wise, like you touched on, Jared, from an outfitter standpoint, to be able to import KML files with their safety zones, we have all our landing zones, the nearest hospitals, nearest routes, cell phone service, to be able to share that as an outfitter to my team out there. I mean, it's secondhand right there to be able to say, wow, I know right here, I can type that in and bam, I know exactly how to get there. I can have my coordinates. I can relay to an ambulance if I need to. Like it's come a long ways, and it's really awesome to see. It's great.
Well, I'm glad you guys are making the most of it. Yeah, I mean, some of the stories that we get in of like search and rescue or first responders, they were able to get to X, Y, and Z spot because they had the OnX Hunt app and they could give them coordinates right away. It's always cool to hear those stories. Never what you want the app to be doing and aiding, but at the end of the day, if it's a tool that can help get you kind of out of one of those oh shit situations, that's a time where we're certainly proud of what we've built.
Absolutely. Even because you guys, I know the biggest complaint that a lot of people have had with OnX is the updates on the maps, like the mapping being old for some areas and stuff.
Aerial imagery.
Yeah, exactly. But I know, at least in my area and a lot of the areas that we hunt up north, it has updated, and it's been, and then the recent imagery has just been awesome.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, do it.
Because of our scale, aerial imagery becomes a lot tougher to source. When you're a smaller company and you don't have that many users tapping into your data, that's the thing that's hard for folks to understand, is because we have so many users, everything costs more because of the amount of people accessing that data or that imagery or, that whatever through our platform. So we've actually had to get really creative in recent years on how to get the best of the best imagery, getting that recent imagery. We obviously recently introduced LiDAR back in August. And so, it just speaks volumes to the team that we have. We're certainly the only outdoor digital mapping company. I would wager to guess maybe the only mapping company in general that has the size of a GIS team that we do. We have 50 employees, I think north of 50 employees. That's all they do is work on our geospatial data sets.
Really?
To ensure that not only our boundary lines are as accurate as your county has them. We actually go to every individual county every single year.
I was going to ask that if you guys act, because some like case in point in Maine, some town offices don't have property tax maps on their website. So It's like, how do you get on that?
Yeah, so we go to every county, and there are some nuanced cases there where, if they don't have digitized data, that becomes a heck of a lot harder for us in order to accurately map that county. Because at the end of the day, the county holds the source of truth. And as you can imagine, it's not like we are able to update in near real time with every individual county. We have kind of a priority list of all the states, based on amount of users in any given state. So let's just say Maine had our most users. You guys would be the first to see an update. Then we would go through, update the next 49 states, and then Maine is up again. It's not like we update a singular state once a year. It's as soon as we can get through that list and re-update. So there's, numerous states see a couple updates every single year. But, it's like, it's because you bought the property last week and you're now paying taxes on it. It's a little bit impossible to be at real time.
Yes.
Definitely, within that 10 to 12 months, most every county is seeing an update.
I was going to say, because when I first got it, 6 years ago, maybe 6, 7 years ago, I had already owned my house for 4 years. And it was still the previous owner. And then just up until maybe 2 years ago, it didn't change over to me. So I'm glad that you touched on that and why it is a little bit of a lag on how long it takes to get stuff updated.
Well, in your case, sounds like probably an edge case. Anytime that you're doing large data transfers, let's say a county has 4,000 parcels within that county. It's not like we're transferring individual parcels. We're transferring 4,000 parcels worth of at one time. So the other thing is if you have an error like that, if you query the map, so anytime you tap on the map, that's what we call a query. There's little bubbles with different options, add waypoint, do this, do that. You scroll over, you can report error. Send an error report, and that actually goes to a singular human on our GIS team. When you report that error, you say, first name, last name, what your error report is, whether that's, hey, my lines are shifted by X amount of yards, or it's an outdated ownership name, whatever it is. So that is an option in the app because we know we're not perfect. And that just allows us to say, oh, okay, this person reported an error. Let's dive in with this county in Maine, go get the right data, pump it in. So, not perfect data, but at the end of the day, we have real humans that are verifying all of this, whereas every other digital hunting app is just gathering third-party data and plugging it in.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that because I'm going to be honest. I don't think I have ever noticed that button. I'm actually opening OnX right now to see where it is.
Well, it takes a little bit of scroll. And at the end of the day, there are so few people that, frankly, even scratch the surface with the amount of features and capabilities of the app. At the end of the day, a lot of people see it as a digital plat map, or, in your guys' case, it's like mainly a navigational tool to ensure that you're being efficient in the time that you have in the woods or safe. And there's just so many small nuanced use cases that I know the app like the back of my hand because I've lived in it for almost a decade. But I always tell people if you just play around on the app for like 30, 35 minutes while you're watching TV, you can't break anything. That's the best way to learn it, is just turn around.
I have found it's funny that you say just sit there and play with it, but I have noticed that one time I tried that and it got into bringing my map to like the flat portion where you're looking at it instead of like bird's eye overview, and I had no idea how to change it back.
Mini panic attack.
And I was like, I hate this.
In there and kind of like,
yeah.
It's funny. We're talking about this. We're used to just using the app on our phone, but this winter I've been playing around with it actually on the computer on the desktop and looking at it. And it's just from that point of view, doing my scouting right now, actually for ahead of time, it's been just incredible. And like just playing around with the wind features and different things you can do. It like the possibilities seem almost endless. Where do you see you guys' next, what's your next goals as far as the company and as where you guys see this whole sort of thing going forward, Jared?
Yeah, so I mean, I agree. The desktop app, if I'm at home, I'm using the desktop most of the time. It's a little bit easier to navigate. You have a larger screen. But as far as where it's going, man, it's so hard to say, especially with, I won't even say the introduction, but as AI begins to further establish and become part of everyone's everyday life, whether you're a fan of AI or not, it's one of them things where it's like you're either going to get on the train and go for the ride, or you're going to get left way behind the rest of the world. And so I don't know. On one hand, I think AI is incredibly powerful and has a lot of upside and benefit. On the other hand, like most outdoorsy hunt-focused people, there's some things that I hate about AI. At the end of the day, like I think OnX is a tool that objectively has made hunting easier. Not necessarily like killing a Boone and Crockett moose has become easier with OnX, but simply finding access, navigating, marking areas of interest through scouting that, a decade ago, you would have just had to remember on what you found at that spot, how to get back to it, how to access it correctly, all those things. So inherently, I think OnX has made hunting easier in the past 10 years. And I don't necessarily love it, but I think that's the direction that is continually being built towards, is in a day and age where time seems more and more valuable and less available through kids, through careers, through all of these other things that are available to us today. So many folks are looking for efficiency unlocks.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where OnX is really going, is like the mantra of no time wasted, or making the most of the time you have. And so like our deer movement forecast, for instance, it's something that we put into the app last year and didn't market it a whole lot. It lives within the weather feature. It was something we wanted to test into. But that deer movement forecast is powered by trail camera insights with the trail camera integration that exists within OnX.
Really?
We're aggregating those, and it's a machine learned thing. It's not like taking Rob and Kenny's trail cameras and providing specific data insights for you on just your trail cameras. It's aggregated regionally, and it's not something that humans are manipulating. It's all machine learning. But I think it's going to get to a point where, it's going to become even more regionalized or potentially personalized to, again, really help you understand, okay, I can either hunt Saturday or I can hunt Sunday. I think there's a lot of folks that can look at a weather forecast or a time of year and understand, I should hunt Saturday or I should hunt Sunday. But there's even more folks that don't understand those things. They're hunting on time availability, not on peak animal movement opportunity. So I think more and more things of that nature are going to come into play, where we're never going to kill the moose for you. We're never going to kill the white. But we're going to put as many things available to you to increase your odds of success as we can. You know, at the end of the day, that comes with some trepidation for me. Like, I don't want hunting to be, I don't want OnX to be the big red easy button for me. But I do want it to facilitate better experiences in the woods. You know, I think there's something deeply satisfying and rewarding about having to work hard and earn that freezer full of meat, that trophy on the wall. But at the end of the day, it's like everything in life is moving towards efficiency unlocks. And so, you know, we're just going to get left behind if we don't join that bandwagon.
It definitely seems like it's making people more confident in the woods too. Like, you know, especially new hunters, you know, because I'm sure, like you were saying, you know, people that don't have as much time, they're kind of looking for a little bit of way to save time. But if they didn't have or weren't using OnX to have that confidence to do it, new hunters probably give up, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, imagine, you know, whenever you started hunting, or maybe the first time you went out of, I can vividly remember.
I've been lost a few times.
when I turned 16 and, you know, I had my driver's license and I could go chase a turkey with my buddy and without my dad, I can vividly remember being like, man, are we still on this piece of land? Did that fence I crossed a while ago? Like, was that a fence? And there's no more of that. Like, you don't have to look over your shoulder. You can spend $35 if you just need a single state, or $100 if you need multiple states. And you never have to wonder if you are in the legal right or the legal wrong. There's always the ethical right or the ethical wrong. And that's going to come down to the individual for the rest of time. But, you know, if the conservation officer is waiting back at your vehicle and you have OnX, you can at least be 100% confident that you were in good faith on the right side of the law.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's a great feature.
Point. I like that.
Yeah. 100%.
Oh, well, you want to jump into some moose stories? You said you've been to Alaska a few times and stuff. You said you're going back again this September. How have your hunts been out there?
Yeah, well, have you boys only hunted Maine moose, or what's your guys' moose outlay of experience here?
I've only done Maine. Kenny's done Canada as well, correct?
Yeah, Eastern Canadian. That's what we got over here.
Like, yeah, and I mean, your guys' moose hunting, by and large, I have not been fortunate enough to draw a Maine moose tag or embark on one of somebody else's Maine moose tags. But from my understanding, you guys are like thick country, lots of calling. There's not a lot of spot and stock opportunity. You know, more so it's like laying the groundwork, understanding where the moose are before season ever comes in, and really hunting them with knowledge versus like the spot and stock, figure it out in real time. So it's certainly a little bit different than what I've done in Alaska, but like, I'd like to hear how most of your hunts go down, so I can provide a little bit context of like where the difference is from a Maine or an Eastern Canadian moose hunt is versus what I've experienced in Alaska.
Yeah. I'll let you pipe in on that one, Kenny.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as far as an outfitter standpoint, and then our guiding standpoint commercially, it really comes down to our client. Client ability is the number one advantage and disadvantage as far as the moose hunt goes. And I'd put that pretty much, you know, across the board, even for a general lottery guy that is doing it on your own. Your physical ability will pretty much determine your chances and success, really. You know, so commonly, you know, for us, if we got a guy or a female that can go, we're averaging 8 miles to 9 miles a day on foot. Now, it sounds like a lot, you know, but it's short bursts. You know, it's a hunt in, We have a certain style that we utilize, and we'll go into these areas, and when it's time to go, it's time to go, and when it's not, it's not. So, of course, you might catch one crossing a road, or see one in a clear cut or whatnot. But ideally for us, our style is it's all dependent on our client and what we need to do to get them successful and a chance. But usually we're calling these things in. We want to, our shots are 100 yards and less usually. Commonly we say open sights, sometimes, a smaller scope, that sort of thing. But it can be, it's so thick you can't see 5 feet in front of you, but you can see the treetops moving, and it's go time. So that ideally for us, that's what we try to do.
Yeah, it's funny you say the 5 feet.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It's funny, Kenny said 5 feet. I instantly thought about Cody McDonald's hunt a couple of years ago. They shot it at 5 feet, and you still couldn't see the moose because the trees were so thick.
Yeah, a moose at 5 feet, that would be pretty special.
Yeah.
So how much history do you have with some of the moose that you harvest? Obviously, you said you guys do a bunch of shed hunting, and if you're hunting out there every year, I mean, do you guys, is it relatable to like a whitetail property? Obviously, you guys are hunting like vast public lands, but like, have you had the opportunity to build history with individual animals? Because like, that's my favorite part of whitetail hunting, and that's why like I'm always drawn to the whitetail woods. Is like, I hate to call it building a relationship with an animal, but that's what it is. And like, when you finally harvest that animal, it's bittersweet. So I'm curious, like, do you guys have a fair bit of that where you're at?
Yeah. So we're very fortunate.
Jump right on that, Kenny.
Yeah, have an awesome team. Obviously, it takes a team to be able to, have the success and to set a standard. So we're very fortunate in that, where we have a large team. But it starts, like we were talking about, it starts right now. We're going in, after the season, we take dibs on who made it, who survived, how the overall herd is looking in our area. And really right about now, we're starting to get out there for sheds. It is all public land. Everything that we hunt is open to the public. Public can shed hunt it. It is a lottery system, and there's some over-the-counter tags that you can purchase to moose hunt, but there's competition out there. So you got to adapt to it. But, this guy behind me, this paddle right here, we've been after this bull for 4 years now, got the trail cam pictures. This is the only shed we've been able to find. We tried to hunt him last year. Rob tried to, we all tried, and he disappeared. So it's like you were saying, some of those stories, where did he go? Trying to build that. And for us, as soon as that animal's harvested, that's our trophy photos. And, by the time we bring it back to the butcher shop, that's our time with that rack, those animals. So, we like to try to find the shed so that, that we can hold on to that and we have something for them. To get a replica of a moose rack is pretty expensive. So to keep doing those on and on, it's hard. So we're fortunate enough right now. We're up to, I think, 12 different bulls that we've found sets off. And we have them in our trophy room, and I think we're up to 6.
Yeah, in the rack room at one. Yep.
Yeah, so 6 of them we've harvested, where we've found different sets off and harvested.
So in your experience, and this is, I'll stop asking questions here after this, maybe.
Keep going, dude.
What's the age in which that you want to get a bull moose to for the potential of throwing his most mature rack?
For us, obviously it's similar to whitetail, right? It's all going to come down to food sources that year. It all starts with the winter. How stressed were they going into that winter? How much snowpack are we going to have? There's really no predators per se, other than the bears on calves, or unless there's a pretty bad wound to some of these, the coyotes will go after them. But, other than that, we have a parasite that takes over, that will thin the herd down when it's necessary. It's dependent on year. Like this year, it was a good start, but then we had a drought. had to do antlers. We noticed this year, even on our mature bulls. I consider a mature bull in that 6 to 8 year old range. And those bulls were small this year. Whereas, those bulls 6 to 8 should be in the 50s. Those were about 48, this year, 46s. So a good crop. We're seeing a really good crop. It depends. A young bull this year we had that had 30 points on him this year, and he was only aged at 5 years old. So, obviously genetics in that area play, but, we try to go after the mature animals as it is.
Yeah, I always just find it interesting, like from being a lifetime whitetail guy, and obviously whitetails are probably the most well documented. People say 5.5 to 7.5, somewhere there they're going to throw their best headgear. Elk, a lot of people say 7 to 9 years old they're throwing their best headgear. And I've just recently got in a real rabbit hole of using Deer Age Lab, if you're familiar with the cementing of teeth. So you pull the incisor, the front two teeth of any ungulate, and up to they claim like 97% accuracy, because basically those in really any teeth that's just easiest with the incisors, they grow rings like a tree. You can almost with definite positivity say this was a X-year-old critter. And I've been doing it pretty religiously on everything I shoot over the last few years. And even whitetails, on like farms that we manage well. We have trail cameras. We build history with deer. It's shocking how often that we're like a year off of how old they actually are, younger or older. So I don't know. It's just something that's really spurred my curiosity and something that I'm going to continue to do. Pretty much with every ungulate, I chop out those incisor teeth and get them made, because so many people, especially in the whitetail world, they say with objectiveness or positivity of, oh, this is a 4.5-year-old buck, or oh, that's a 5-year-old deer, and sometimes you're right. I think it's really hard to judge on body characteristics, whether it's a sway back or, a big mature brisket, deep chest. All too often you can be fooled into thinking a 4.5-year-old deer is, well, he's actually 6.5, or maybe he's actually 6.5. So I always just find it interesting. Different people having expertise with, whether it's a moose, an elk, or a deer.
It's cool that you brought that up about the teeth thing, because the state of Maine actually pulls a tooth from every moose that's harvested. Same with our bears, they pull a tooth.
Really?
And we have our own. They send it to a lab here at one of the University of Maines that does it. I think we're the only state that does that.
And I know Montana pulls the tooth when we bring in a bear. But honestly, I never got like a report back or anything.
Yeah. But on our IFNW, our Inland Fisheries and Wildlife website, you can go on and there's an age report that's given out every year for everything that's harvested, and you can go on there and look. Like case point, like a couple of years ago, one of the cow hunts that I guided, that cow ended up being 11 and a half. Kenny, was it 11 and a half? 12 and a half?
I think
something like that. Yeah. And then actually one of the. Yeah, something like that. And then one of the bulls that Kenny was talking about that we harvested, that we had the rack from, like a history with it, he was shot 2 years ago, and they said he was 11 and a half, didn't they? Or was it 15 and a half?
One of them was 15 and a half, and another one was 11 and a half. Yeah. That's hard to, it's hard to say on some of those too. Like, some of them you think you're way off and stuff like that. So some of them definitely get mixed up in the system. There's no doubt about that. But we're seeing, a good trophy class, you're going to be in that 6 to 8 year range.
Interesting. But yeah, on my Alaskan exploits, I've I've been on two separate moose hunts that 3 moose have been yielded from, and I'll go back in September. One of them, the first moose hunt was with my sister, brother-in-law, and my dad. My sister and brother-in-law.
Oh, that's a cool family hunt.
Yeah, super cool family hunt, and it was actually more coastal of a hunt. It was super cool experience. Not necessarily what I would drop as like a dream trophy moose opportunity, but we weren't really there for a trophy. My sister was really the one up to bat for that hunt. And she just wanted to kill a moose. So she found a unit that was any bull, you know, it wasn't 50 inches or 4 brows on one side. And being that it was coastal, it was in a very, very wet area of the state. And we actually operated out of a little Forest Service cabin. And if memory serves me correct, we actually got 16 inches of rain over the 8 days that we were there.
Holy smokes,
It was
dude.
insane. It was crazy
Wow.
wet.
Did you need waders the whole time? Or what?
We were full on waders every single day, all day long. Like honestly, you couldn't have really made that work with anything but waders.
Did you have a raft?
Yeah, there's no raft on that one. But a raft could have been used. You know, like the little creek that ran by camp was much more like a large creek or a small river.
Crazy.
But yeah, that one, you know, there was a knob nearby, but man, it was so thick with alder and like Devil's Club and stuff. We climbed up there on 2 different occasions, and you could see a little bit, but it really didn't provide worthwhile glassing opportunities. So the way we kind of hunted on that moose hunt was really very much like how you guys probably hunt in Maine, or what I assimilate to like turkey hunting. You know, you wander around, you find some fresh sign, find rubs, find scat, you know, find that fresh hot sign and set up and call. So that's really what we did on that hunt. And boy, did we find some paddles. I think we maybe found, I don't know, somewhere between 6 and 12. You know,
Really?
paddles.
That's awesome, dude.
You know, a lot of them were old, you know, a couple of them. What did I just step on in this 2 feet deep of water? And you reach down there and you pull up, you know, a mid-50s paddle. But yeah, I actually ended up just calling in. I think it was like a 48-inch bull. So for an Alaskan moose, you know, not a big one. But I mean, that thing, we watched him come from probably 3/4 of a mile, and he ran all the way right into my sister's barrel.
Yeah. Licking his chops the whole way.
Like, and you get that, I don't know what they're actually called, you know, the moose beard, and it's just like,
oh yeah,
playing, and it was so unbelievable to watch that thing come through the muskeg, you know, because like all the alders and shit are chest high on a human,
yeah.
but that moose, it's like, oh my god, like all that brush only goes up to his knees, you know, and she stopped him probably 70 yards, but I think that moose might have come to 5 feet. I mean, he was tuned up and coming right to me where I was calling.
Love it.
And she plugged him right there, which was just, I mean, it was awesome. You know, my dad was right there, got to watch, you know, his daughter take a moose. And then, you know, they're big, but when you walk up on them, it's like a whole nother echelon of big. You know, I've been up to elk and stuff, and you get up to a moose and you're just like, holy smokes, this is a mega critter.
Yeah.
So that was a cool hunt. And then my brother-in-law ended up shooting just like a little bullwinkle on kind of the last available day that we had to shoot a moose, given the logistics. So honestly, that hunt was more meat cutting than I ever want to do again. You know, because like between having to debone it to get it all on the plane, and then we got it back to their house in Alaska, and then it was like cutting it up for, you know, freezing. I took some home to Montana. My dad took some home to Wisconsin. I mean, I bet the 4 of us had no less than 80 man hours into cutting meat that trip. I mean, it just so much freaking meat comes off of it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Really
did you guys debone it right there, or did you bring quarters back and they debone it at camp?
So we could, that one, quarters back to camp, and then we deboned at camp. That was not a unit where it has to be out of the field, meat on the bone. Thankfully, otherwise we'd been paying at least one additional bush flight to get that out. But that was just super cool hunt because it was special as far as being there with the family, and the rain added certainly an interesting element to it. And then the other hunt I did was with an uncle of mine. He sold his business. I think he was maybe like 60 or 61 at the time. It was May when he sold it, and he said, "Jared, I want to go on an Alaskan moose hunt." And I'm kind of I don't know. I'll call myself the family resident expedition hunt planner. So it was an uncle saying, "Hey, I got the checkbook. You put the logistics and plans together, and we'll go on a moose hunt." And so I swung pretty big on that one. And we went to the Bristol Bay region of Alaska and floated a river just under 70 miles.
Wow.
So just DIY, we just got dropped at the headwaters and floated down into a main stem that the river we floated was a tributary of. And floating on a moose hunt's a lot of work. You know, I'm not saying I won't ever do it again, but it's going to be a minute. It's a super cool experience, but if your goal is to kill a moose, there's just so much wasted time in a float. Setting up camp, tearing down camp, you know, and once you float by it, it's gone forever. Like, if you move on, you no longer get to hunt that piece of country. And I think, you know, anytime that you're floating that duration of distance, you know, mid 60 miles, you're definitely going to go through some landscape changes. You know, we started up fairly high where it was pretty tundra-y, almost mountain foothills, a lot of alders. Then we kind of floated into, you know, more varied terrain where there was a lot of alders and willows by the river, some spruce stands. And then it became super just dark, freaking black timber down towards the bottom of the float. So the whole time it was, you know, planning for what's next as much as you were on focusing on what you had in front of you. Because like for me, I did not want to get to the dark timber without having killed a moose, because you lose all of your eyeballs, right? Like we're doing a lot of glassing. And we did not see a lot of moose. We saw a few moose. You know, we saw a cow early up high in the float. We saw a pile of grizzly bears throughout the float. Well, brown bears, actually, I guess, where we were. Saw some caribou. But ultimately, and this was shame on me, I did not realize that we were floating into a giant, and I mean giant, burn. And it had actually just burned that prior summer. So we were floating
bummer.
and that burn happened in June. And like, yes, shame on me for not doing that research. All I had to do was turn on the historic wildfire layer in OnX, and I would have had that in.
Nice plug.
Didn't even really occur to me of a burn being in that part of Alaska. But anyhow, so it was very drastic. It was like it changed from lush growth everywhere to absolutely scorched earth. And the scorched earth part was probably like the last 10 miles of more varied terrain before you got to like the deep, dark, never ending timber. Gotcha. And so I had picked out a glassing knob before we ever left that I was like super keen on in this area. We set up camp. We had about a mile hike. We had to row across the river, mile hike up to this glassing knob. And the burn actually had a lot of moose sign. So
cool.
When we floated into it, I was like, holy shit, did I hose us? As we got to exploring a little bit more, it was like, okay, there's moose track here. There's scat. Like the moose haven't totally vacated. And it was, the unit we were hunting was only open from September 5th to September 15th. You know, it's managed as a trophy area, minimum 50 or 4 on one side. And it was the night of, I want to say the 10th or the 11th. We still had about 40 miles to float. And so it was getting down there where you start to do the math of like, all right, realistically, how many days do I have left where I can shoot a moose, get a moose out, get to pickup point, and not like miss our return flights home? Which, you know, if you miss a return flight home, whatever, not the end of the world. But you always have it in the back of your mind, or at least I do. The day that my hunt starts, it's like, okay, I have X days to get this done. Well, I have X days minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. And so we were getting to the point where it was getting to be pressure time. You know, we had like really reasonably 2 days left to kill a moose. And 5 miles away, we spotted just an absolute hammer of a moose working around this lake. And we actually watched him kind of close the distance from 5 miles to about 3 miles. And he was on the campside of the river, and he had a cow with him. And we watched them all night, and then we watched them bed down together right in the middle of this area that didn't get scorched. There was enough water there where it was willowy and aldery, and he was 2.5 miles off the river, and I knew that full well. And my uncle's in his mid-60s, and I mean, he's in his mid-60s. He ain't carrying 140 pound meat quarter, and he certainly ain't carrying it 2.5 miles. So, we got off the knob. I think it got dark at like 10 p.m. or something. We get back to the tent pushing 11 p.m. I didn't sleep a lick that night. I was literally just sitting on OnX with my external battery connected, like plotting, how do we possibly kill this moose? I knew full well that 2.5 miles off the river was like 1.5 miles beyond the radius that I'd realistically given us. But that didn't really compute for me at the time, I guess. And, I kind of put together a route to get us there. And then I could tell that there was like this little feeder creek that I envisioned, if we kill this moose there, we are going to have to use that creek and build like a huck fin raft and float this meat a good portion out, because there's no way that we're carrying it 2.5 miles. Shame on me, I did not bring a pack raft on that moose hunt. Every moose hunt going forward, believe you me, there will be a pack raft. But we ended up killing that moose pretty much right where we had left him the night before, bedded with his cow.
That's awesome.
On this hunt that was supposed to be my uncle killing the moose, he had brought his bow. He's a bow hunter through and through. We got to about 300 yards and there just wasn't a whole lot of cover left. So I said, listen, we can either shoot this moose with my rifle or we can roll the dice and try to get in bow range. And he was like, listen, man, I want you to shoot that moose. Like you've rode the whole river. You've done everything on this trip. Yes, I was the financer, but like I am as happy if you shoot that moose as if I shoot that moose.
That's awesome.
Say no more. Say no more.
So then I started blast.
So at 300 yards, that moose took, man, it's never ceased to blow my mind how easily those things soak up bullets. You know, I think I sent 5 of them right to the boiler room. And when we got up to them, all 5 were within the size of a grapefruit. But I mean, you know, they just stand there and take it.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, ended up shooting that moose. It was 2.4 miles off the river. We moved meat for 44 of 48 consecutive hours. You know, we took a small little nap in there. But that was a lot of meat moving over the next 2 days. And I'll share with you guys. I mean, you can use the picture for the podcast promotion if you want, but I'll send a picture of me before moose pack out and after moose pack out. You know, we shot it on one of those days, humid and windless, and the White Sox up there, they're like a little gnat that, oh boy, like you. You guys will enjoy the before and after pictures. But then we still had like 30 something miles to float. And I've done a pretty fair amount of rowing on a raft out here in Montana. But boy, you put a full moose in a raft on top of all the gear, and that becomes a bear. We pushed, I think, 34 miles in the raft and on one day in order to make the pickup sandbar on time. So that was a pretty gnarly hunt. But it was a moose worth the gnarly.
I was gonna say, it sounds like it was worth it, man. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, and
Wow.
there's some other story. I mean, it's a big moose. It's a 70-inch moose. But because of the time that it took to take care of that thing, you have to keep both paddles intact with the skull plate legally. That was a unit that meat has to stay on the bone. You have to take the entirety of the ribs out. I actually used my rifle and I put my barrel of my rifle in each ear hole and I just blew its skull cap off with my rifle because I was like so over cutting meat and trying to saw it off for a gyro. I mean, there wasn't even a single thought about moving that hide back to the river for a full like head mount. So things got pretty Western and pretty like getting that moose out.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one, I'll never forget that one, that's for sure. But long story short, I mean, yeah, I've had nothing but incredible moose hunt experiences. And then this year, instead of floating, instead of doing the turkey hunt method of calling, around hot sign, we're going to get dropped on a lake adjacent to a ridge where we can climb up on a ridge, do glass and try to call them to us. So this September will kind of round out my marquee moose hunt style experience as far as purely calling, purely spot and stock. And now it'll be, kind of a mix of calling, spot and stock on a ridge. But I love moose hunting. I mean, they're just such unique critters.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome.
That's a great story.
And I would say,
What an
in my
experience.
opinion, outside of like, yeah, thanks, fellers. Outside of antelope, I would say moose is my favorite game to eat. And boy, do you get a lot of it when you get one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's by far my favorite, too. I mean, my family loves it. Like, we just made moose empanadas last night. I had some for lunch right before we jumped on.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, how much meat would you guys say you yield from Maine moose?
Oh, I guess it depends on how much trauma and damage from how many rounds you send at the thing. But geez, it's got to be 400, maybe if not more. Depends.
Yeah, I mean, a big hind quarter for us is 80 to 100 pounds. So that's just, you know what I mean? That depends if you lop the hoof off or if you leave it on. Generally speaking, that's about it. It takes us 7 trips. That's the way, or 7 packers. That's usually about 7 to 8. Granted, we've had bulls that take way more, like 11 bags.
Well, that's with getting the head out too.
Yeah, with the head too. So that's generally where we're at about. So.
Yeah, I remember when we were done cutting like fully processed meat on the trip with my sister and brother-in-law, and that was, a 48-inch Alaskan bull. So I don't know, probably a 3-year-old moose. I'm thinking something up there. And then a little bullwinkle, which was obviously like a 1.5-year-old moose. Those 2 moose, fully clean, fully trimmed. I think we netted 900 pounds of meat.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
That's great.
Then like the moose that I shot a couple of years later was like so significantly bigger than both of those other moose. Like I didn't end up flying home with all that moose meat simply because if you fly home with all the moose meat from an Alaskan moose, you spent like pretty close to your next Alaskan moose hunt.
Yeah.
To get the meat home.
Yeah.
But I have no doubt in my mind that moose would have yielded 600 plus pounds of meat.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's a big animal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I've obviously you guys don't really get weights. Yeah, you guys don't really get weights out there because you are packing everything out. So do we. We pack everything out too. A lot of people do the tradition in Maine of dragging it out or towing it out. But
yeah, I've seen the tractors.
Yeah.
I would like to pack out a moose with a tractor. That would be preferential style.
Yeah, there's even there's a group in Vermont that does it with horses. They'll do it with draw horses. They'll drag them out. It's pretty cool. It's like a big tradition over there, I suppose. But yeah, anyways, but like a big moose here, if it was like a dressed weight, like there's like I don't even know if it's an official club, but it's like everybody tries to get in 1,000-pound moose.
Sure.
So that's why they like to get the pictures hanging from the game pole and stuff. But geez, I would think an Alaskan moose is way more than that.
Oh yeah. No, I bet. I mean, I would imagine one of them mature Alaskan Yukon moose has got to be 1,600 pounds.
Easy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah, that's a big animal, dude.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, when it really comes down to it, I mean, outside of if you draw a Maine tag, like an Alaskan moose hunt is, yes, it's expensive, but if you take time into consideration, you know, you're going to be applying for a Colorado or, you know, Idaho, you have decent odds, but an Idaho moose tag, if you draw it, it's a $2,800 moose tag. So when it comes down to it, like, yes, an Alaskan moose hunt, a DIY moose hunt, you're going to be somewhere between 7 and 12 grand, just depending on how much planning, if you want to go through an outfitter, you know, all these different things. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know. I like to tell myself that's not expensive, not that expensive.
Yeah, I tell myself that about hunting stuff all the time. That's not that bad. Yeah, but I appreciate that you touching on that price wise and stuff, because this is actually something that I wanted to bring up again, kind of circling back to OnX a little bit, talking about prices and stuff like that. I just found out actually like a month ago that an elite membership comes with like a hunting fool membership thing. So I was going to ask, like, because you've been to Alaska a few times, I know you're in the industry, so you probably have connections anyways for like ways of doing hunts over there and stuff like that. But was that like an encouragement for people to use Hunting Fool and stuff like that if you're trying to do a DIY over there?
Yeah, so our elite membership, you know, we've really poured the gas on like the Western application season just because it is so complex. So not only do you get access to the digital Hunting Fool membership, which gives you access to their like professional humans that have an impossible amount of knowledge in different states on different units and application process, but you also get access to our hunt research tools. So it's a, you know, draw odds data center, for lack of better terms. So, you know, you can upload to your profile. All right, I got 5 points in Wyoming for deer, 6 for elk, you know, all these different things that you can put in your profile. And then you can start to filter, you know, by species, by state, what you have potential drawing, what your draw odds are for different species. And that's something we're working on to bring it more nationwide, because, you know, every state actually has some pretty cool opportunities. You know, it might not be about drawing an elk tag or a moose tag, but it might be a wildlife management area that's a draw hunt to be able to hunt turkeys there or things of that nature. So it'll be an evolution. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like if you have a dream to go on a moose hunt, Alaska is the only surefire way to fulfill that dream. And Canada too. Canada has the opportunity if you know, go pay a guide and go hunt in Canada. But otherwise, you're putting your hope in the lottery of Maine, of Idaho, of Colorado. And Colorado's not a lottery. Colorado, you're behind dozens of years of point creep. You know,
I would say, yeah, that's all by a point system.
That's a
right?
bonus point state where that's, you know, Idaho is a true lottery. Maine is a true lottery. So, you know, those are nuances that are actually very, very important details if you ever want to go on a moose hunt. But honestly, like Alaska, yeah, I mean, it's a bear to plan. The logistics and the forward thinking that Alaska takes, you're not going to say, I want to go on a moose hunt in May and go in September like I did without like having been to Alaska previously. You know, I've been to Alaska every year for the last, you know, so like I have a lot of Alaskan experience and some connections, and like the groundwork has been laid. So planning an Alaskan trip for me is no longer as daunting as it was a decade ago. But it's like, you got to start somewhere. And I would say if you have 10 grand, I would say 10 grand is like a pretty doable amount of money to go on a DIY Alaskan moose hunt. You can certainly cut that down if you go with multiple people with the expectation that you're going with 4 guys, but you're only going to kill 2 moose or things of that nature. There's always ways to do it cheaper. But yeah, I mean, it's very realistic to go on a 2027 moose hunt if you start putting the pieces together today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for touching on that, because that's, something we've been talking about and stuff, because we have a lot of listeners that actually chime in and be like, hey, do you have any, Alaskan guests or whatever? And you've been there several times. So
and I
can
go down a rabbit hole on Alaska. It's like if you want the simplified version and you want to go outfitted, figure you need 15 grand, where it's like you have an outfitter and you say, hey, I want to go. I don't need a guide. I want to DIY. 15 grand and your life is very simple. Like you don't have to figure out the logistics. You don't have to rent a jet boat and go like conquer the Yukon River yourself. It's that like 7 to 10 grand where you're going to need to be a very competent outdoorsman. You're going to need to understand the dangers of Alaska. Alaska will kill you. If you are not prepared, Alaska will kill you. It is not like Maine or Colorado or Idaho where somebody is an in-reach message away. Yes, they're still an in-reach message away, but you're a long ways from help after that in-reach. So, then it's understanding like, are you fit to float? Are you fit to pack out a moose? Like that.
This goes into the physical abilities again.
Yeah. So if you want to do a Alaska break down the logistics podcast, I could.
We'll save that for next.
Yeah. So in other words,
that's
Jared,
cool, because we're
the $25 permit fee for Maine is pretty cheap to put in then.
No brainer. I mean, honestly, if you listen to this podcast and you are not putting in for Maine, not that I'm trying to, lobby for more competition for Kenny, Rob, and myself, but here I am. But I mean, $25 to put in, and you have just as good a chance as Kenny's grandpa, who's been putting in for the last 75 years on your first year as they do on their 75th year. I don't know. Like that concept kind of blows my mind sometimes. But for folks just getting into the game, it sure is a blessing, because like, I don't know, if you're willing to go spend $5 at the gas station to enter the Powerball.
Yep, I agree with that.
You're an absolute moron to not put in the Maine moose lottery.
Yeah, awesome. I thank you. Thanks for chiming in with that.
Yeah, I appreciate that one right there, Jared. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, I hope to win that lottery someday, and I'll be knocking on the door when I do to say, "Hey, boys, let's go moose hunt."
Hey, love it. Right. I'm down, 100%. Even if it happens this year, because I mean, applications open Wednesday, Tuesday, I think.
Yeah,
they open April 1st.
April 1st or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Geez, we're approaching on an hour now. Kenny, you got any last questions before we? Because then we'll schedule another one so we could talk about Alaska and stuff like that. But you got any other questions, Kenny, before we?
Yeah, no, I just know we got a lot of listeners out of Canada. I'm sure they use your product. We use it ourselves and we talk about it all the time, any chance we can get. Anything you want to add for those guys, Jared?
Yeah, we just we launched Canada 18 months ago, something like that.
Oh, really? I didn't know it was that soon ago. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we always had that request. At the end of the day, it's a for-profit business, right? So we gotta follow some of the dollar signs, and Canada is a fairly small market, just as far as the total addressable number of hunters in the country. But we realized that they don't have a platform up to the speed that OnX is operating at. And so, we made a push into Canada. It's not at parity with the US, just because international data, Canada as a country at large is some time period behind the United States, just as far as digital infrastructure. So like collecting private parcel information has actually been incredibly difficult. The competitor app that's up there, iHunter, They basically have downloadable plat maps that you pay individually for by the I forget what they call them in Canada. I don't think they call them counties. But at any rate, you can spend $20 for an individual downloadable map, but it's not interactive. You know, it loses the gusto that OnX provides with real-time location. So some of our data in Canada is a lot less useful than in the US as far as, oh, Jared Larsen owns this property. Oh, Kenny owns that property. It's just like the outlines are there of what is private, what is crown land, but it doesn't have the individual usernames. And then, you know, we're just not as far along with some of the, you know, aerial imagery in Canada is certainly a little bit less powerful than it is in the States, some of those things. But at the end of the day, you know, if there are Canadian listeners that are using OnX, you know, feedback is incredibly appreciated from Canadian user standpoints. help@onxmaps.com is a great email. I mean, we love hearing our customers' feedback. That's what our product is built on. It's built on customers telling us what they need, why they need it, and we go find a way to build it. So, yeah, it's fully functional in Canada with the elite membership. And if you are a Canada listener and there are things you want to see, fire them over and we'll get them in the backlog.
Awesome. Thanks for plugging that in. I do have a question because is their map uploadable to OnX?
Oh, like they're like individual.
Yeah, the one you said you could. Yeah, you said they could do download.
Unfortunately, it's not part of OnX yet. That's something that, you know, again, the competitive app to OnX is iHunter, at which point they have all of those downloadable, like, I don't know, PDF that you buy on an individual basis. And so it's something that we've explored doing, but at the end of the day, we don't want add-on purchases for our customers. We want clean $100 payment, but at some point, something's going to give. We're either going to need to figure out how to have parity to that with that available to our customers, or we're going to need to overcome, you know, the digital data problem that we have of importing landowner information. Parcel lines are great. I mean, it keeps you honest. It keeps you on the right side of the law, but so often, you know, folks just want to see their name on the property. Everybody, their first move is always the same. It's like, let's see my house, make sure my name is on it. Make sure the pool that I installed last year is like that's everybody's first witness test. So we get it.
And if it's not there, they're like, this sucks.
The amount of people that are like, my single wide, I added it. It's now a double wide. This happened 6 months ago. Why isn't this updated on the aerial imagery? Or I built a shed last year. Why isn't it on my maps? You know, and I can empathize. You know, like as a homeowner now, it's like, well, what? Why isn't this updated? You know, I get it. But at the end of the day, like everything takes more time than you want it to, which I think. By and large, true with everything in life.
100%. Awesome. Well, cool. Hey, thanks, guys. We're just over the hour mark. I think we're like an hour and 5 minutes, something like that. But hey, Jared, thank you so much for jumping on. We'll definitely schedule another one. We can dive more into Alaska stuff, Alaskan planning hunts and stuff like that, DIY style. But yeah, thank you guys, and thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. Take care, and God bless.